Product marketing is contributing significantly to the success of companies worldwide. Vital to processes such as go-to-market strategy, messaging and positioning, competitive intelligence, to name a few. Yet, despite its undisputed benefits, the universal pain point remains, with many confused as to what product marketing is and what benefits it brings to the table. With our research revealing just 27% of PMM's colleagues have a clear-cut understanding of the role until now. Written by Richard King, founder of Product Marketing Alliance, and Bryony Pierce, Chief Marketing Officer at the Alliance, Misunderstood, Product Marketing Alliance's brand new book debunks the myths and misconceptions of a discipline that's rapidly establishing itself as a core component within organizations. A must-have for any product marketer, Misunderstood features a variety of transferable insights that'll help you educate your peers, gain essential buy-in from internal stakeholders, and secure the appreciation and recognition that often eludes professionals within the PMM domain. This pioneering publication is packed with first-hand knowledge, techniques, and case studies from experts plying their trade at companies such as Privy, G2, Hotjar, Intercom, Zendesk, Adobe, and Drift, and will support you as you strive to amplify your role, establish your authority, and elevate your strategic value. As the ultimate toolkit for positioning yourself as a PMM, each chapter flips common product marketing principles like positioning, personas, segmentation, and more on their head to illustrate how product marketers applying their own trade on their colleagues can result in ultimate aha moment and result in your peers finally understanding the real strategic value you bring to the role and to the company as a whole. Pre-order your copy at pmmalliance.co/misunderstood now, ahead of the eagerly awaited April 19th release date. Correct misconceptions, ditch discrepancies, be understood.
Good morning, customer marketers, product evangelists, marketing service providers, go-to-market experts, and product marketers, and welcome to the PMA's Product Marketing Misunderstood, an online summit of thought leaders who are working to make sure that the broader business world has a full understanding of what we do and why we do it. I'm Eric Manser, VP of Product Marketing for Crayon, the industry leader in market and competitive intelligence software, and I am your host for today's events. In fact, Crayon's proud to be the title sponsor for the PMA Misunderstood Summit, and we couldn't be more excited about it. We've had a long-standing relationship with the Product Marketing Alliance and really with product marketers all over the world who rely on our software to track and analyze competitive intelligence data from around the internet and through their own communications networks. Our customers then activate that CI data through a variety of tools that help enable their sales, customer success, product management, and executive teams. I myself have been involved with the Product Marketing Alliance for several years now when I was first invited to a private Slack team filled with people like me, product marketers in search of a community whose jobs were misunderstood, and a place where we could share ideas and learn from each other. If you're like most PMMs, you've probably had to explain to your friends and loved ones what it is you actually do for a living. But inside the friendly confines of the Product Marketing Alliance, each and every one of your fellow members knows exactly what you do for a living because they're in the thick of it, day in and day out. As you've probably surmised, the theme of today's event is about how much of what PMMs do on a daily basis is misunderstood by various stakeholders within their own organizations, up to and including their peers in either marketing or product development. But the PMA is here to change that, and they've put together a full-day summit experience that is chock full of amazing speakers whose sessions will be constructed around this core theme of bringing about a change in sentiment around the impact that product marketing can have on an organization. This is such a valuable effort, and it's so important that the team at the Product Marketing Alliance literally wrote a book on this topic. Misunderstood, the book, will be released in hardcover and in ebook formats on April 18th. Today's sessions will be live streamed all over the world, but if you're in a time zone that makes, well, staying up late to see all these amazing speakers a little challenging, you'll be able to access each session through the on-demand content library on the PMA's website. Subscribed PMA members will have unlimited access to the recordings from the summit, alongside previous event footage, exclusive articles, templates, frameworks, and much, much more. And if you're still not a member, what are you waiting for? Head to productmarketingalliance.com and sign up today. Being the title sponsor of an event called Misunderstood makes sense for Crayon, given we believe that so much of what competitive intelligence is as either a task or as a discipline is similarly misunderstood. So let's start with a statement of fact. The use cases for competitive intelligence go beyond simply using it for battle cards, and in fact, CI can drive real business impact all throughout your company. And to be frank, anyone who claims that competitive intelligence is only about the enablement of the people inside your sales organization completely misunderstands the value of what CI can provide. Competitive intelligence can help your product management team find valuable insights to direct their development roadmap. It can empower your customer success team, helping them fend off rivals who are trying to sign your clients away. And your C-suite can use competitive intel to keep a finger on the pulse of the market, recognizing trends and observing vertical shifts to help them make more strategic business decisions in a much more informed way. Crayon is the category creator. We've been around the longest, and we're recognized as the industry leader in competitive intelligence software. And by the way, that's not a boast. That's not a marketing tagline. That's another established fact. Independent market research firms like Forrester and Gartner, and the enthusiastic reviews of our own users on G2 have said the exact same thing. And the Product Marketing Alliance themselves have anointed Crayon as the leader of the PMA Pulse 2 years running, naming us as the undisputed champion of competitive intelligence tools, which are their words, not ours. Crayon is the competitive intelligence backbone that lets companies see and seize opportunities that create sustainable business advantage. And if you're a product marketer who's relentless in your pursuit of growth in spite of a crowded market, we would love to talk to you. Head over to crayon.co and request a free demo of our software, and while you're there, check out some of the amazing free content that Crayon has created over the past 8+ years. But enough about us, and enough about me. Let's talk briefly about the format of today's event. The Misunderstood Summit will have your standard long-form keynotes from industry leaders, but you'll also find shorter, more compact words of wisdom delivered by champions of our discipline peppered throughout the schedule. So let's kick things off with one such presentation that perfectly encapsulates what the Product Marketing Alliance is doing with the Misunderstood book and summit. Prove product marketing value. And it makes sense since our first speaker is the brand new VP of Product Marketing for the PMA themselves. Please welcome Harvey Lee as he talks about how PMMs can make an impact and prove value from day one.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Product Marketing Misunderstood. For this next session, I am joined by the fantastic Harvey Lee. So to get us going today, Harvey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey to your current position, and ultimately a time in your career when you really felt that product marketing has been misunderstood, and why?
Well, thank you, Rose, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about this important topic. To career history, where do I start? In the 80s, in the 90s. I guess I started in product marketing officially in some sort of capacity in the mid 90s when I was in the music industry, actually. But before that, as with most people, I was probably doing product marketing or things that were associated with product marketing beforehand without even having the title. So as with most people, I started not in the product marketing sphere. I started in other categories or other businesses, doing other things. And actually, I started my music business industry career in the 80s from a business and a creative side, not in product marketing per se. But I suppose the road to product marketing started there because towards the end of my career in the music industry, I ended up working for record labels, working in marketing and business management and so on and so forth. And that's where I sort of got my first introduction to a lot of the elements that we consider product marketing today. Fast forward many, many years, I suppose that my first official product marketing role was towards the end of the 90s, working for Virgin as a product marketing manager, looking after the US portfolio. And then in the early 2000s, well, actually 2001, I joined Microsoft. So in a product marketer role on the Xbox team, and I was there for 12 years, did pre-launch from the first Xbox all the way through to the Xbox One and everything else in between. And then I switched gears and moved into the cybersecurity industry on the consumer side at Kaspersky Lab as the director of product marketing globally there. More recently, I've worked for Epson on the print division and worked for Avast, who are one of the largest cybersecurity firms in the world, heading up the product marketing effort for their new Avast One proposition. And more recently, I've become a product marketing consultant, so working for myself with private clients and so on and so forth. So it's been a long journey. I've been doing it for product marketing officially for 25 years, probably a little bit longer in reality. But I don't think that story is any different from many others in terms of my pathway into it, which is rich and varied, you know. In terms of the misunderstanding of product marketing, well, I think, talking to those in the community and colleagues and peers, it's very clear that it's a big problem. And it's a good problem to have, in that if product marketing as a function or as a discipline wasn't growing in the way that it is, then nobody would be talking about it, right? So from that point of view, if we look at the perspective from that angle, it's the kind of problem you want to have, right? But to understand why it's misunderstood, I think it's helpful to have a little potted history of marketing in general, right? And I think it breaks down into three main areas: sort of how marketing and brand marketing came about, how the marketing function as a department has been dispersed or fragmented over the years, especially in the past 10 to 20 years, I would say, since the the introduction of the internet as an important part of our lives. And then the third part is really, how do we frame product marketing today to get it to be more understandable as a concept, not just for employers and for organizations, but also for ourselves, as professionals. So we go back to the beginning of that and we think about the history of marketing. Well, yeah, I mean, it started in the early 1930s in Cincinnati with Procter & Gamble and Neil McElroy sort of really inventing brand marketing as we know it today, which came out of category management, around all the big consumer brands that they had at the time, ironically, some of which are still hugely popular today. And, I did a PMA webinar on career development about a year ago. And the case study that I put in that was actually, if you look at the 5 key steps that he introduced as what he called the brand man. We'd say the brand person now, wouldn't we? But the brand man in 1931. There's nothing that's different from what a product marketer would do today, right? Even going back to 1931, the development of research, look deeply inside the category, the formation of plans, the retrospective of going back, looking at what results were, the reiteration of future plans, so on and so forth, the sort of 5 key points that he laid out. And then if we fast forward through all the ages of the Industrial Revolution, consumerism, the age of distribution, the age of information, as these ages get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, we end up sort of closer to where we are today with the age of the internet, or the age of information, as we would call it. And that took 20 years. And really, the product marketing function has been born out, if you like, of the internet. I mean, I was in it pre-internet, so I remember what mail merge on a 286 IBM machine used to look like, and have to use a computer without a mouse and function button. So I've been there, right? But the reality of it is the way that we as a community look at, and many businesses look at product marketing today, is as a B2B SaaS function. I mean, if we look at the state of product marketing report, not just the most recent one, but actually most of them, all 3 of them, over 90% in that report cite product marketing as a purely B2B SaaS function, right? And that wouldn't exist without the internet. It wouldn't exist without the age of information. So it brings us really to the dispersion of marketing as a function of the fragmentation of it, because since the internet has become, I'll say, pivotal in our lives, almost a utility in our lives that we can't live without, water, electricity, gas, internet. It's in that list now, right? The marketing department has looked completely different, right? So the marketing department of yonder years, of years gone back, would have just been one department responsible for everything, right? Now we have multiple departments under the banner of marketing, regardless of what title you want to use or what banner you want to use, whether they're the digital marketers or the performance marketers or the growth marketers or whatever you want to call it. Then we've got the product marketers, then we've got marketing communications, and then PR sort of gets lost in there somewhere, which used to be, in the old-fashioned marketing department. So we have this fragmentation of the marketing department, of which we're now part of. We're one of the fragmented pieces. But the challenge for most organizations and people in organizations is they understand quite fundamentally where quite a lot of these other pieces sit, because it's quite tangible to them. So marketing now is shorthand for campaigns, right? Generally speaking, it didn't used to be. It used to be everything, which means they don't do segmentation, they don't do positioning, there's a lot of stuff they don't do. I once heard them call the colouring in department. It's like they're there for doing campaigns, right? I don't mean that disingenuously. And then we have the performance of the digital folks who are optimizing, converting on the web, et cetera, et cetera. We understand that, that's tangible. But product marketing as an understandable concept is still not that well understood, as we know, in the context of everybody else's role within the marketing department. And the reason that I talk about the marketing department so much is that, back to that report, the State of Product Marketing report, 70% of product marketers report to the marketing department, right? So it's relevant. The dispersion or fragmentation of the marketing department is relevant.
Absolutely.
And where does that lead us today? Well, it leads us in a strong position because as a function, it's growing tangibly in the most recent years, sort of 2 to 5 years so well, but it hasn't fixed the problem. We're not that much closer to organizations really understanding tangible value, right? So, for some organizations, they think a product marketer is a marketer who does all the marketing for a product, including campaigns, right? Or in some, it's purely executional. And for some, it's purely strategic, or they understand the growth value from the strategic delivery for a senior product marketer. But the reality is it's all of these things and more. So how do we put a frame around how we think about it? And the way that I do it is, and through the PMA scholars and the PMA core certification program that I teach live, as you know, the way that I put it together is on a 2x2 grid. So if we take region location responsibility, so we take a global or a head office function at the top, think about a 2x2 grid like this at the top, and then regional responsibility at the bottom. So that could be country specific responsibility, or pan-regional, like Latin America, Europe, Asia Pac. For this exercise, it's all the same. So we've got head office, and then we've got everyone else, which is regions. And then on the other axis going across left to right, we've got strategic and we've got tactical or execution. And the reality of it is there's no one definition of product marketing that fits within that 2x2 grid, right? Because when I mapped my own career on it, I quickly learned a couple of things, especially when I mapped my tenure, which was I've seen to spend 80% of my career in head office roles, leaning more towards strategic delivery, right? So we've got regional responsibility and we've got actual responsibility around delivery. So head office and strategic seem to be where I lean, although I've had roles that were more regional and more executional, where I spent less of my career, ironically. And what I learned from this was that as I looked at the 4 quadrants, there's no one definition that solves for them all. Mm-hmm. Right? That's where I came to. And I thought, well, there's at least 2 or 3 definitions that are variations on a theme. So there's commonality in what we do around positioning and messaging, definition of value, articulation of value, and conveying that to the market, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of our jobs are very colored by the context in which we're in. And that context is, do you work for a multinational? Are you part of a bigger team? Are you working for a startup? And if so, at what stage? And are you the only product marketer? So when you overlay this layer of context, it again muddies the waters again. It's like it changes it. And the definition of those product marketers, whether they're a head office person, a regional person, whether they're tasked with strategy or tactics, takes on another layer of context, right? So it's just another layer of complexity into the definition. So I think the reality of it is that you're either responsible for the whole world or you're responsible for a bit of it. If you're responsible for the whole world, you're more likely to be strategic, especially if you're in a bigger company. If you're responsible for the whole world and you're the only product marketer in a startup, you're more likely to be doing everything, and then it's harder to prioritize, right? Where should I sit between strategy and tactics? So how do I think of my definition, right? And then there's the company context of what they think it is, right? And it wouldn't be the first time where I've had to educate an organization that I already worked for about how to frame the context of how to get the best value out of the function. But most organizations don't think of it in that way. Maybe I'm the only one who thinks of it in that way, but I think it makes sense.
No, I think it's great to kind of think about your own career history and how that maps out, and then how that might translate across companies of all different sizes. Yeah, I think it can tell us a lot. And you were mentioning, obviously, as one of our valued experts and residents here at PMA, that you've taken a number of early stage product marketers through both the core certification and our scholars program and things like that. But what advice do you like to pass on to those students that you're coaching through, the future budding product marketers, to help them ensure that they can make an impact and prove value in an entry-level role? I mean, yeah, like you said, sometimes it's quantity over quality almost with the product marketing role.
It's difficult because, especially for the product marketers starting out, right? It's like one of the questions I get often in the community is, where do I start? It's like, I have this endless amount of demands on my time. And I'm like a rabbit in headlights, right? So I think there's 3 or 4 key elements which I think that we can frame this around. The first one is we have to be really focused about what is valuable within the context that you're in. So one of the things I think that we need to move away from is understanding that there's one rule of thumb for everyone and everything, because there isn't. You know, product marketing is one of those roles, if not, I don't say the only role, but it's one of those roles where it's so contextual, depending on what's going on and who you're working for, and being able to understand what's going on with a real wide peripheral vision is really helpful. So being focused on the context that you're in, what is the company trying to achieve? Where are they now? What kind of capability do they have? What assets do I have? What skills do I have? What are the gaps? You know, asking yourself all these kind of questions to determine, right down to distill it down to something that really is tangible is helpful. But there is, you know, the next point I want to make is that there is all too often, especially in the startup community, and especially where I'd say that the product marketing team is less than 3, but more likely to be 1 or 2, right? Is that all too often there's such an immediate pressure to execute on product marketers in that context. And I think it's grossly unfair. Because what are they supposed to execute? Okay, I get it that, you know, the organization that they work for, we need growth, we need product, we need product adoption, we need revenue. I get all of that. But there's no tactics without strategy, right? So if whoever's in that role isn't given the time to develop and understand the market through segmentation, choiceful targeting, positioning, and therefore all the other things that flow on from there, developing persona portraits, great articulated messaging, so on and so forth, then more often than not, that execution or those tactics that they're going to execute are at risk of being considered throwing up as much mud against the wall and seeing what sticks with a blindfold on, right? So that's why you can't have tactics without strategy. And so that pressure to execute as soon as you come in, unfortunately, you know, quells that quite dramatically. And as a junior product marketer or product marketer in one of your first jobs, it's like, I know a lot of people feel bad about challenging the organization. So, well, hold on a minute. I think there's a better way to do this and we can be more effective. Especially when it's a sort of kitchen sink type operation where you've just got to do everything, right? How do you determine you can't do everything? So how do you prioritize? So I think resisting the pressure to execute immediately if you're in a new role is something whilst you diagnose your context, right? And then I think the last point on this one, and I know it's a really dry topic, and you know, Lord knows, you know, I've had my own dry experiences of these before, but OKRs can be a really useful tool to help us bring clarity and lay the guide rails for us and the organization down. There's a couple of reasons why I think the OKRs, or sometimes in organizations they're called MBOs, but most people call them OKRs these days, is really important, and how it can help product marketers, you know, be impactful. Well, first of all, if you do the OKRs, if you embrace the process, right, and set meaningful objectives, then what you're basically doing is, once you get into the communication part of those OKRs, you're telling the organization what is a priority, and you're also by default telling them what isn't, right? So if it's not on this list, it's either not getting done or it's not a priority, right? So that's why communication of these things is really, really important. But all too often that doesn't happen. So the communication of OKRs is usually where things fall down. Okay, I did my OKRs, really happy with it. My manager's happy with it, but the rest of the organization doesn't know. Therefore, they don't know what product marketing's priorities are, i.e. what value we're going to deliver, right? As a consequence. So I think it's really important to embrace the process around OKRs and get pretty good at it if you can, right? Because I think that you'll benefit from it once it's done. I'm not saying it's the most fun to do, and it's certainly not the most fun thing as a product marketer to do, but I think it is up there in terms of importance and impact.
Absolutely, and that really leads us nicely onto our final point. And obviously the book Product Marketing Misunderstood that we're working on really aims to equip our readers with the knowledge and techniques they need to not only establish their authority, but elevate that strategic value that you've been talking about so clearly. And with those kind of OKRs and key metrics in mind, what are some of those metrics that you would recommend product marketers can track so they can really prove that value to senior leadership to kind of take the next step?
Yeah, I get this a lot as well in the community, you know, in the weekly workshops with core and scholars and the programs that we teach. And my immediate response to folks who ask that question is, it's not up to me to tell you what metrics that you need to be governed by, but those metrics should be governed by the objectives that you've set, right? So my short answer is, it just depends, which frustrates people because they're like, you're not giving me a direct answer. And I said, and I usually meet that with, yes, I'm deliberately not giving you a direct answer. But they're relevant to the objectives that they're governed by, right? So whatever your objective is, they should be the relevant metrics that constitute or make up success in that context, right? But there are things that we can do to set out the measurability in a more structured, solid way. And I think, you know, the SMART framework is a really, really good, actionable way to get it down on paper, even digital paper or real paper, or in the internet, or however you want to get it written down, just get it written down, right? And the SMART framework, I think if you're a P&A member, there's a great SMART framework template in the membership templates plan. So we're setting out things that are specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. And if you operate within that framework, right, the measurement, it will come to you. So the M part of SMART, you know, the measurable part is, what number are we starting from and want to move to? But then you get the context within that and when you're going to deliver it. So again, it's a little bit more work up front, but by using that style, by going with that style of work, or using those kind of tools, such as the SMART framework, they're very, very powerful enabler to sort of staple on the back of your objectives and say, and this is how we're going to measure everything we do, right? And that's really how a lot of HR departments look at things. So if you think about tools like SuccessFactors, which is, well, it's now owned by SAP, they use the SMART framework within their HR tool. So it's a very standard, weighty method in which to do it. But whether your company uses those kind of HR tools or not, I would encourage product marketers to use it anyway offline, because I think that you're going to have impact with your line manager and your superiors to say, this is how I look at how I measure myself and how I determine success, right? And it's not just about the M part, it's about the specificity, the actionability, and, you know, making sure people know when things are going to be delivered. So it gives the full context around it. So I think that it'll be very powerful as a product marketer to put that in front of leadership. In terms of the actual number itself, what should I be measuring? Well, I can give you some guidance. They should be product-led, depending on your job description and what you're responsible for. They should be sales-related, again, back to the product or service that you're responsible for. And wherever product marketing has a contribution to play, or you have a contribution to play. And there should be bottom line hard numbers that affect the P&L. So revenue related, but make sure, and I'll finish on this key point, and this is really important though, is that when you're signing up for a number that's revenue related, right, more often than not, that number is going to have a shared responsibility. So I once had a VP come to me, not so long ago actually, and he said, I want your OKR, here's your OKRs or MBOs for the up and coming year. And he gave me 4 data points. And it was like, one was volume, one was revenue, one was market share, and I think one was inventory of some type. And I looked at it and went, these are not OKRs. These are KPIs. These are unguided KPIs. So what I did with that was, you know, I thought, well, this is a share. I'm not responsible for millions and tens of millions of dollars of revenue on my own. I'm here to make a contribution to that. And I will determine which objectives I think product marketing can identify that are valuable to feed up into that. But I'm not solely responsible for those revenue numbers. I do hear in the community some people are tasked like that. And the guidance I give people is, make the case to have those kind of revenue metrics as a shared objective in the organization, because you're all jointly responsible for it, right? Or else nobody gets paid, you know, the utilities don't get paid. We all have a shared responsibility for that. We shouldn't have 100% responsibility for it. So think about those kind of numbers as a shared contribution, and they should be weighted, right? And also the last point is around attribution. So everything that you choose to do, or everything that you think is a good idea to do in terms of those objectives, have to think about who else is going to contribute to that and what that attribution should be. And it's not that controversial to say that, you know, we should be rewarded for our work, but the challenge is it usually only occurs to people after the fact, right? So they think, oh, well, I did that campaign and I should have had 20% of that. And it's like, it's been and gone. It's just done. The reality of it is that when we're thinking about attribution, it has to be done through the OKR process before it's signed off, right? You have to negotiate it all up front so that you can put it in your SMART framework and then it's go time, right? But it can't be reverse engineered unless you want a bun fight in the office, which I don't recommend for anyone. But so those are my guidances around metrics. Again, it's just one of those answers that it just depends, but hopefully it's giving you some sort of framework to think about the thought process about how we can get to that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The kind of defining those key metrics and the route to achieving those revenue goals and things like that. You know, product marketing is uniquely positioned between sales, marketing, product, customer success, and everyone has a role to play. And I think having that, like, you know, those North Star metrics that you're working towards and filtering down between every role in the company as well is an absolute recipe for success.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Harvey. Insightful as ever, and hopefully lots of knowledge kind of passed on there. We will be right back with another session with Product Marketing Misunderstood. So stay tuned. Thanks.
Welcome.
Are you wondering how to align the product marketing function at your organization? Do your internal teams have little or no understanding of what product marketing is and the benefits you bring to the fore? Are you sick of being misunderstood? Product Marketing Alliance's brand new book, Misunderstood, features first-hand knowledge, techniques, and case studies to help you demystify product marketing, elevate the function, and gain the recognition you and your fellow PMMs deserve. Learn how to effectively communicate the value you bring to key processes such as positioning, personas, segmentation, OKRs, and gain supplementary intel from the likes of Privy, G2, Hotjar, Intercom, Zendesk, Adobe, and Drift. Misunderstood is packed with takeaways that will propel the value of your role and the overall importance of the PMM function, and isn't to be missed. Get your copy at pmmalliance.co/misunderstood.
Hello, PMA Virtual Summit attendees. I'm Eric Manser, VP of Product Marketing at Crayon, and your host for Product Marketing Misunderstood. For some of you, it still might be pretty early in your workday, so grab an extra cup of coffee and get ready for a few more early morning sessions, including 2 fireside chats that are sure to pique your PMM interests. My company, Crayon, is a market and competitive intelligence software provider to some of the biggest names in enterprise technology, including Intuit, Databricks, Atlassian, and Gong, just to name a few. Our customers make use of our tool set to activate competitive intelligence throughout their organization. And as a PMM that rolls up to a chief marketing officer, I'm routinely asked to work with my growth marketing team to help them with messaging, positioning, and even competitive intelligence. It's the reason why I'm so interested in this next fireside chat, because PMMs who work alongside their colleagues in marketing can have massive influence over helping to drive conversions and growing their onboarding funnels. Please welcome Nadav Charnias, the head of product marketing for Top of Funnel at Wix, as he discusses this topic and more with Sean Broderick, the head of product marketing at eDesk.
Hello and welcome to our fireside chat. The Product Marketing Misunderstood event is going to solve that age-old question of how to get an entire organization to understand product marketing and value what you do. I'm delighted to be joined by Nadav Charnias. We're going to be talking about how to drive conversion and improve your onboarding funnel. Nadav, you're very welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for the introduction, Sean. Great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yeah, I'm currently the director of product marketing at a company called Nemogu here in Israel. Before that role, I was the head of product marketing for the funnel group at Wix. And previously with that, I had a product marketing experience at Vimeo in New York and Microsoft as well. So a few good years of work doing product marketing, and throughout that time, doing a lot of work on funnel optimizations, A/B testing, things like that.
Really cool. And for anybody who's interested, I'm Sean Broderick. I'm a head of product marketing, the host of the Product Marketing AI podcast. I think the experience that you have, Nadav, in Wix and in your current role, talking about that funnel optimization piece, this talk is obviously bang about that topic and improving your onboarding flow. What are we talking about when we talk about funnel and onboarding, and how would you define it for the listeners into this event?
So I think, there's like the classic definition of a funnel. Basically, it's the user journey from start to finish, even though there really is no such thing as the end of a user journey, right? It's like it's always a continuous journey for our users. But when you think about it, it's from a lead. If I have to define it, it's from a lead to a conversion and beyond, right? So it starts at acquisition, we get to engagement, adoption, conversion, and then we do upselling and cross-selling, and eventually, hopefully, evangelizing. But in a broader sense, I like to think about it as the steps that users take from the first moment they hear about you or your product, to them understanding your value, trying out your product, loving your product, paying you for your product, and then getting others to try your product, right? So it's just the movement between those different steps of getting to know your product and then becoming a fan of your product and your company.
You have an impressive hold on the steps, and that they come exactly to mind. I've got to say, I'd have to be referring back to an old funnel diagram to read them off that quickly.
Well, it comes from doing funnel stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Where does the funnel really start and really end? I mean, you touched on it a little bit there, but in real terms, how does it break down on your day-to-day role as a product marketer?
So just to break that down, where does the funnel start? The funnel starts with your first interaction with a user, right? Whether that's an ad or a landing page. And the role there is really to get your users to convince them to sign up, to start using your product, to join your experience. But in my opinion, the really important part of the funnel, the first most important part of the funnel, is when they first meet your product and when you start onboarding them, right? So in my opinion, a great funnel a really, really great funnel has to include a great optimized onboarding flow. And the reason for that is that it can do a lot of things for you that will give you extra value later on in the journey, right? So you can gather actionable information about your users with a good onboarding flow. You can remove barriers to conversion across the different steps just from a great onboarding flow. And it's not only just for you to gather information and take actions. You can use an onboarding flow to provide your users with relevant information about your product. And an important part about onboarding flow is that it really is a marketing activity, but you try to make it as non-marketing as possible, right? So it's like you're telling your users about your product without being too marketing about it. And then all these things can really help you get your users to success as fast as possible. And improve conversion later on.
And from in each organization, it's obviously going to be different. And I think you touched on that, as in it's almost like a marketing thing.
Right.
Where does the line sit between, for you, growth marketing, product marketing, demand generation in that onboarding flow, and which of those divisions and which of those areas of the marketing team really own this, or is it a collaborative approach?
I mean, it has to be, first and foremost, it has to be a collaborative approach. I don't think it makes sense for each one of the growth marketing, acquisition marketing, demand generation. They can't, and product marketing can't work in silos, right? Because then the different parts of the funnel seem disjointed and it seems weird, and there's a lot of barriers between those different, and you see that in a lot of different funnels, right? Like naturally teams tend to work in silos. That's just the way kind of human nature is. And then there's like handoffs, which you can tell in a product are coming, and experiences are different. So there has to be a collaboration, but I think there is clear ownership, right? If we're talking about funnel and optimization, I think product marketing's ownership comes when the user lands on your owned assets, right? So like growth marketing, acquisition, demand generation, the role there is really to bring users to your assets, right? To your owned assets. Once a user gets to your owned asset, that's where product marketing needs to like really think about optimization. How do we get them as fast as possible and as smoothly as possible to sign up, to go through onboarding, to start using the product, to understand the value of the product and to convert, right? And that's the thinking that you have to take as a product marketer. You have to take a bird's eye view of that whole funnel. And obviously one team that you didn't mention that is really important to collaborate throughout that journey is, of course, the product team. And I think a lot of times the border between product marketing and product isn't clear when we're talking about funnel. And I think that's like one of the questions that we should also make clear to people, is there is ownership for product marketing when we talk about funnel optimization. There's really important ownership. Like I said, I think onboarding and funnel is at its essence, it's a marketing function, but you can't do it without building things, right? So this product has to be involved. But product marketing's responsibility is to make sure that you know what you're communicating and how you're communicating and where you're communicating it. So basically is like, are you talking to the right people? Who are you talking to? Are they the right people? What are you saying? And are you saying it at the right time? And that, I think, is the ownership of product marketing throughout the funnel. And that's kind of the bird's eye view that you need to take as a product marketer when you're working both with the different marketing teams and the product teams.
I like that analogy almost of the growth marketers and the demand marketers bringing the horse to water, and
exactly,
the product marketers have to make them drink, right?
Exactly
right as you take a sip of water.
Yeah.
But listen, I think product marketers and everybody who's on this call, we're going to be using an awful lot of tools on a day-to-day basis. How does the tool set come in for you, and how do you work with the various tools from CRM to optimization, funnel type activity, trial increasing software? How does that look like in your experience, and how has it worked before?
So honestly, in the companies that I've worked at so far, we've always had kind of in-house built technology that was built in-house to do those things. I mean, yeah, CRM, the sales team or the demand gen team or the different like outbound looking teams have been using that. And the way you kind of as a product marketer can use that is you can take some of the information that's gathered about your different users and use that as kind of getting to know your users better, right? And understanding where they're like, where we're losing, where we're winning, where barriers exist. But again, in my experience, I've used different technologies that were built in-house. I'm sure there's external technologies that can do the same things, but the things I've used as A/B testing platforms are really, really important, right? So optimization, you can't really do it without good testing platforms. Not every product has enough users to actually do statistically significant A/B testing. But you can do different things, right? You don't have to do an A/B testing test. You can do a test that like you kind of look at directional information, and then you talk to some of your users. I have used userinterview.com, which has been really good at getting people to finding people to talk to, or using usertesting.com if I want to work with a product team and put things in front of people. But as far as A/B testing, yeah, it's like really important. There's a bunch of different platforms out there like Optimizely and Google Optimize and things like that. I've more used internal tools. I've also used so there's different internal tools that I've worked with that are good at like injecting messaging within the journey and within the funnel itself, right? At different times. At Wix and Vimeo, we had kind of internal tools to do that, but if I'm not mistaken, you can use like Intercom to do those kind of things. I think there's other platforms. Maybe Sean, maybe you're familiar with them. But those I think are really, really important to be like basically owned by product marketing within the organization as a way to start talking to your users, right? You want to have a certain platform where you can inject messaging within the product. I've found that probably the most impactful messaging that you can use is that in-product messaging. If it's in the right place, if it's not too spammy, and if you use it at the right time, it's super, super impactful. And if you're not using that, then you're really kind of missing out.
Yeah, I think I love that analogy of the userinterview.com. And because one of the things I was thinking about was, is this just a straight A/B test? And you pick the winner and go on from there. But I love the fact that you've gone a step before that. Check the messaging with a panel of people who are in your ICP and who are going to care about it. And then you can run it into an A/B test and figure out who the winner is from there. And I think that really speaks to your experience in that full funnel optimization and doing things in the right way, rather than having a kind of a bake off on an A/B test and saying, well, B is better. And maybe that's not the case for your particular target audience. It might drive clicks, but maybe it's not driving conversions.
Yeah, I think that's super, super, super accurate, right? Like you really need to do the user interviews to generate hypotheses that make sense or that are based in reality. And then if you can do an A/B test, right? Like I said, sometimes you can't even truly do an A/B test, or an A/B test will take you like 18 months. You can't really do that, right? So yeah, so like the user interview has to be key everywhere, whether it's both to generate hypotheses or to validate like a test that you created. You always have to be talking to your users and kind of putting those things in front of them,
Right.
For sure.
Let's go a little bit deeper on PMM's role in this funnel piece. Mm-hmm. What's in your opinion, what's the PMM roles, breaking it down stage by stage and optimizing the funnel and the onboarding flows?
So yeah, so like I said, there's once a user comes to your owned asset, whether it's a landing page, whether it's your home page, whether it's just immediately to sign up in an onboarding flow, it is the product marketer's responsibility to make sure that they get through those different stages to the next step, to the next place where you find value, right? Or where your user can find value. So I think like initially it's really important for you as a product marketer to understand what those steps are. What are the actions that you need your user to take in each one? And then what is the value that you want different users to find, right? You might have different segments of users might have different value. You need to figure out like what is the value that you want your user to find and how you do that. And then you collaborate with product within the product on how you bubble that up, how you show that to them. Or you collaborate with your growth marketing team or your demand gen team on how you let them know that that's something that they're gonna find within the product, right? So they know they're gonna find it. So I'd say the first thing is you need to know the steps of your funnel. You might in your organization, if it hasn't been defined already, you might be the one that needs to define what the funnel looks like, right? And what are the steps that needs to be taken? What are the actions? And what's the value that you want to bubble up to your user in each step, so they take the next so they get to the next step. And then after that, I think it's really, really important for you to own all the messaging that's happening within that funnel at a bird's eye view, and then dig down into specifics, right? So like when I talk about bird's eye view, is what's the general message that you want your users to take away? What are the things that you want them to know about your product? Is it a certain message about the value? Is it, do you want to teach them how to start using? Is your product really complicated and do you want to simplify that to them? Like, what are the things that you want to tell them at each step of the funnel and in the overall understanding of your product? And then how do you execute that? Like, where do you show that? How do you talk that? Is that like a pop-up message? Is it a banner at the top of your product? Is it really the way you word the questions of your onboarding flow, so they kind of tell the users what they're going to find in a product, right? So you kind of need to own that. And then I think really it's really important, and in my opinion, wherever I've been, I've tried to push for that, is it's important for product marketers to have KPIs that they're pushing for, and that they're responsible for, right? So for each step of the funnel, like, what is the KPI that signifies conversion? And then you, along with other stakeholders, but it's really important for you as a product marketer to say, okay, this is my KPI and I'm going to be pushing this to optimize the funnel.
I think there's some of the, we're going to get onto a little bit some of the pitfalls a little bit later on, but I think you touched on one of them there, which is owning the messaging all the way through. And I think that's where sometimes product marketers will get sideswiped and not really have that level of control on that message on the front end site, because it's so visible. Everybody's got an opinion on what they want to see on the front end of the site, the call to action buttons, etc. I think owning that messaging is a massive pitfall for product marketers as a whole. Can you expand on that one, and also some of the other pitfalls that product marketers need to avoid when trying to optimize their funnel in their organizations?
Right. So isn't that the challenge of everything you do as a product marketer, right? Like, everybody has an opinion about everything. And there's always other teams that want to kind of say, I own this, right? But I think as a product marketer, if to be a good product marketer, you have to have like those broad shoulders and the ability to push back and say, like, this is my opinion and this is what I think should be on here, and like, it's my responsibility to define what we want, like, the positioning to be on this page or on this part of the product. There's always definitely going to be stakeholders, whether it's the CMO, CTO, CEO, or other teams, and you have to be like flexible and be able to take that feedback. But at the end of the day, if you as a product marketer don't have an opinion about what that messaging should be, or like overall messaging should be, then like, what are you in the room for, right? Like, that should be the bottom line is you should have an opinion on, like, what are we trying to say? It doesn't have to be like the actual content, like how we say the words, but like, what are we trying to say? What's the bottom line of the value that we're trying to get to our users? That should definitely be a product marketing responsibility. Is it a pitfall? Yeah, sure. Like, people are going to argue with you, and there's always going to be people that, like, that say, oh no, this is not product marketing's role to say this. This is content writers, but no, like, at the end of the day, product marketing should have that responsibility, in my opinion. And nobody is better, I think, placed to have that responsibility, right? Because you're at the nexus of the product, of the users, of the market, competitors, all of those things. Or if you have a sales team, you're the one that should be talking to the sales team on a regular basis. So you're the one that's at the nexus of like all that information, and should be able to have like a strong opinion. Strong opinions doesn't mean like you're always right, but you should definitely come in with a strong opinion, I think. And in my experience, if you have that strong opinion and it's backed up by actual, data and experience, then people respect that even if they don't agree with you. As far as other pitfalls in the funnel, I think like onboarding itself has a ton of pitfalls. I think if I think about onboarding, what are the big pitfalls I've seen is people trying to ask too many questions of the users, like trying to get too much information at once. You have to understand that people have like very, very low attention spans. And you have to ask the right questions, right? You have to ask few, 3 to 5 in an onboarding flow, I think is the max. And those questions, the way I would define like what is the right question to ask is like a question that is actionable for you, either at that moment where you can give them either a different question or a different experience, or later on in the funnel. You don't want to ask questions that are just like nice to know questions, right? Those are things that you can get out of surveys or user interviews. But in the onboarding flow, you want to ask questions that are either immediately or later on actionable. If it's not actionable, it shouldn't be on there. So that's one pitfall I think you get in onboarding. Another thing is like being a little bit too making the question too complex, right? So like if you can't answer a question in 5 seconds, then you shouldn't be answered. Like if you as the product marketer can't answer it in 5 seconds, or somebody at your company can't answer it in 5 seconds, then that question should not be in your onboarding flow, right? Like if it's something that you have to think about, that's not the place.
And if they have to go and dig out that information to
exactly.
try and actually answer that question, it's way too complex. You're so right.
It's too complex, and what will happen is they'll drop off right there, and you'll lose that. You'll either lose them in the onboarding flow, or you'll lose them as a user. So you have to make sure that those questions are really, really simple. So I think that's those are like top onboarding pitfalls. Generally in the funnel, I think one of the big pitfalls is, well, there's 2 big pitfalls. One is not doing A/B testing or not testing, but the other one is just doing A/B testing, like you said, and saying, okay, B1, let's go with B. I can't count the number of times you've gone with B and then saw that it was the wrong thing, right? Like sometimes, I mean, I'm not a statistician. I don't know why this happens, but sometimes you win in an A/B test, and then later on you find out that it's like not as successful as you thought it was. It's a weird thing that happens on the internet.
Yeah, I think it's one of those you win the battle but you lose the war. I think exactly. you bring great perspective to it there, because I think when it comes to owning the messaging from a product marketing point of view, you take all of those user interviews, you take the A/B test, and you bring that opinion, that informed opinion. It's like that old Jim Barksdale quote: if we have data, let's go with data. If we have opinions, let's go with mine. And I think that's what product marketers should be doing. And they're bringing that informed opinion and holding it strongly with those broad shoulders, like you say. When we look ahead, Nadav, what are some of the long-term benefits of an optimized funnel in your view and in your experience?
So yeah, there's, like I said, I think like for any funnel, the most important step is having a good onboarding flow, because as your question implies, it has a lot of long-term benefits. First of all, you learn about who your customers are, right? And what they want to do with your product. A lot of times we have a lot of assumptions. We come in thinking that our product is one thing, but it's actually another for our users. And I think a good onboarding flow is really an awesome way to find out if you're right or not. Like I've been surprised by the answers that I've gotten on pretty straightforward questions that we've asked in onboarding flows, right? Like we've asked questions and just gotten responses that we either the balance between the different options was completely off from what we thought it was, or we would put in like an open other kind of option, and we get all these things that we never expected. So it's a really great way to kind of validate and understand who your customers are and what they want to do. And then as time passes, you can also identify trends, right? So see how your customers and your products is changing, and make changes to your onboarding flow into your product based on those, into your funnel based on those trends that you see. Like your product and your users never stay the same, right? So it's a really quick and easy, well, not easy because it's hard to build an onboarding flow, but it's a quick way to find out like what are the trends that are happening. And then you should, like I said, one of the things is if you're not A/B testing, that's a big pitfall of kind of optimizing funnels or having a funnel. You should always be optimizing and A/B testing your funnel. Like it never ends, right? Like if you've gone through all the steps and you've A/B tested and you've kind of improved your KPIs, you don't stop there. You kind of go back and keep doing it over and over and over again. It's part of your job. And that's a great way of finding new bottlenecks and barriers. There's always new bottlenecks and barriers. Whenever you remove a bottleneck, they hit a new bottleneck. And that's the best way for you to kind of find those things. Keep testing, keep looking at the data, keep seeing where people are dropping off and where bottlenecks exist, and try to open them with different tests that you do. And then, like I said, onboarding flow give you like a really good understanding of who your users are in real time. And if you use that information right, you can really create an excellent streamlined user experience that leads to users finding success as fast as possible, and then increase product adoption and better conversion, right? So it's kind of like, if you make little changes in the onboarding flow that are optimized to your user experience, it can create pretty big changes later on in your funnel.
And I think as well, the interesting part about that is you're actually giving yourself actionable KPIs that you can actually track to, because I think that's one of the things that is probably misunderstood about product marketers is the value that they bring across that funnel. And I think when you have this type of focus that you have outlined across this session, you take those KPIs and metrics away, you can own those and you can own the benefits that come with it when you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing right. Let's talk briefly about the different types of organizations from large to small. We have a lot of people on this call who will be working as solo product marketers, and then obviously people in larger organizations similar to your experience with Wix and Vimeo, etc. How does it change based on the organization size, in your opinion, or should this be a part of a product marketer's role, no matter what organization you're in?
So I think that the general outline of all the things that I've said are right, no matter what organization you're in. It just depends on what you're focusing on, right? So if you're in a small company, or if you're just the only product marketer in the room or in the company, then this applies to the entire funnel and the whole product, right? Like you should come in and you should have an opinion, and you should make yourself valuable by those kind of basic product marketing responsibilities, right? Being at the nexus of the product, knowing the product really, really well, knowing the user really, really well, knowing the market really, really well, talking to users, using the product, talking to sales and understanding like, why are we winning? Why are we losing? You bring that and you have kind of that authority. It'll place you well to be an authority for what's going on in the funnel, and kind of yes, putting on the table that yes, I think because of these areas of expertise, I should be owning kind of what the messaging and the communication throughout that funnel looks like. That should be my overall responsibility. But if you're in a large organization, obviously you're not going to be owning that whole thing, right? When I was at Wix, I was part of a funnel team, which kind of owned the Wix funnel. So we, as the Wix funnel team, yes, we did own the entire funnel, but for every part of the funnel or for every part of the product, we worked opposite different product marketers that were responsible for different parts of that product. And the product marketers that did a really, really great job for their product, they saw themselves as the owners of the funnel for their feature or for their part of the product or for their audience, right? Depending on how that's built out. And you as a product marketer should come in, okay, if I'm in a large organization, this audience or this feature or this tool, this is my responsibility. I own the funnel for this. I own like at least the communication part of the funnel. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd own the funnel, right, as product marketing, but doesn't always work that way. But at least own the communication and the messaging within that funnel. And even if you're working opposite a product team that's very strong and like they're like, we own the funnel, like we build it out, we do the testing. You should still dive into the data and look into places and come up with ideas for tests and try to drive tests. And where I've found a lot of success within a large organization is usually large organizations have some kind of self-serve tools for you to run tests, right? Either on messaging or on design and things like that. And if you can do that as a product marketer without having to go to like R&D resources, go ahead and do that, right? And you'll be able to find a lot of value and show a lot of wins that way, which will always get you to the table, right? If you show a few wins on something that didn't demand much resources, it'll get you that authority to be able to get those resources later on if you need them.
Well, that's a fantastic summary, I think, of how people can navigate that journey as a product marketer across the funnel, from owning the messaging communication in it, owning the testing, and I think owning the rewards that come with it by getting it right.
Right.
This whole event is about solving that age-old issue. How do you get an organization to understand product marketing and value what you do? I think you've given today, Nadav, some super insight on how an organization can value a product marketer and really understand the value that they bring. We'll wrap it up there. Nadav, where can people get in touch with you to discuss this and other topics?
I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Nadav Chernilis. You can find my name, and just feel free to reach out, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody who has tuned into this session. Check out some of the other sessions. There's an awesome lineup of speakers across the entire Product Marketing Misunderstood event. Thanks to Richard and to Rose and everybody who has set it up. My name is Sean Broderick. Similar to Nadav, you can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Drop us a message with some feedback on the session, what you liked, what you disliked, what you disagreed with. We'd love to continue the conversation there, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sean.
What's up, PMA members? Eric Manser from Crayon back as your host of Product Marketing Alliance's Misunderstood Summit. Notice that I addressed you all as PMA members. But if you don't count yourself amongst that rarefied group, what are you waiting for? Head over to productmarketingalliance.com and sign up now. Members have access to an astonishing amount of content, including the recordings for each and every session from this festival, plus exclusive articles, templates, frameworks, and much, much more. My company, Crayon, is proud to be the headline sponsor of the PMA Misunderstood event, and we consider our partnership with the Product Marketing Alliance to be an incredibly important one. As more and more product marketers find competitive intelligence gathering and dissemination to be part of their job descriptions, we want to make sure that they know that the undisputed industry leader in CI software has their backs. Up next is a fascinating fireside chat about one of the core elements of enterprise software development and really product development more broadly, market feedback. Now, given their roles and the title of their discussion, it might seem like this is going to be some sort of volatile back and forth. Well, even if there aren't any verbal fireworks, I'm still interested in hearing these two men talk about product development market feedback. Who does it better, outbound PMs or PMMs? Up next is a fascinating fireside chat about one of the core elements of enterprise software development and really product development more broadly, market feedback. Now, given their roles and the title of their discussion, it might seem like this is going to be some sort of volatile back and forth. Well, even if there aren't any verbal fireworks, I'm still interested in hearing these two men talk about product development market feedback. Who does it better, outbound PMs or PMMs? Please welcome the Product Marketing Director for Weaveworks and the Director of Outbound Product Management for Google Cloud, Jordi Moncampany and Richard Seroter.
So Richard and I work in the same sector, the software delivery market. For marketers in this market, there's always a tension between domain knowledge and portable skills and how much one should invest in each bucket, right? If this topic, by the way, interests you, I had a debate about this same very topic with James Doman Pipe and Stephanie Pylon here in the Product Marketing Alliance's Product Marketing Misunderstood last year. So just go check that out. And although in the conversation today, we will touch upon how to perform specific skills that are part of the product marketing remit and the product management remit, the problem with marketing in the software delivery space, the one that Richard and I work in, goes beyond that, in my opinion. The term marketing itself is in frank withdrawal, in my view. At least from titles and outbound exercises and publicly facing materials. Nothing can be identified as marketing because it's frowned upon. It seems like it's an activity that wants to be pushed out of that area when it shouldn't, in my view. And that's ultimately the reason that I brought Richard into this debate and to present the guild of marketing and have him eventually change his title to product marketer from what he currently says he is, an outbound product manager at Google Cloud. So welcome, Richard, and thanks for accepting my invitation to such a weirdly framed debate.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here in the Thunderdome with you. So let's have at it.
So Richard Seroter is a professional that I quite admire. I've never worked with him, but I really like the way he's able to understand the landscape that as professionals we both share. Richard works for Google Cloud as one of its most influential outbound product managers in the field. It was precisely his hiring by Google a while back, but most importantly, this title, the role that I just mentioned, that got me mulling about the topic of what is product marketing, what is outbound product management. Just to give it a bit of context about Richard, so I already knew about him and his career through an interview that Brandon Wichert from the Software Defined Talk podcast did with him probably 2 years ago, Richard. Would you know?
That's about right.
Yeah, but you weren't at Google by then. I don't think so. Or maybe you did.
Or
You
maybe it
joined.
just switched. It was early on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But what really got me thinking about this was his very recent interview with Corey Queen, the CEO, I think, if I'm not wrong, of a company that provides services for AWS clients or cloud clients, people with cloud services and so forth. The podcast is called Screaming in the Cloud, and Corey wanted to understand a few things. One of which would be what the people at Google Cloud with the title Outbound Product Managers do, right? So to that question, actually, Richard answered. So there's outbound product, and I quote, "There's outbound product management teams, mostly associated to the portfolio area, blah, blah, blah. Basically, I am helping make sure the market understands the product and the product understands the market." And not to be totally glib, but a lot of that is we are amplification, okay? So nothing, I mean, to me, that sounds like pretty much a product marketing definition, but I'm fine with that overlap between both. And that's what I actually told Richard on Twitter. It's like, yeah, I can see that as a product marketer skill, right? Or something, a requirement for product marketing. And yet he answered that specifically on the topic of bringing product feedback into product development, market feedback into product development. That's when, and I quote, "I personally have never seen the latter, that market feedback, market intelligence brought into product development, done well by product marketers." I got really offended by that, but I continued nonetheless. Not for lack of trying, me included, that's Richard. From what I observed, product strategy is the realm of product management. A few others penetrate that. And I honestly can see a lot of truth there. Maybe it's my frustration, actually speaking. So let's delve into what is market research, market feedback and intelligence, and the dynamics of bringing that into product marketing, into product development. Apologies, it's a bit late for me. I'm a bit tired. And then why would a outbound PM be better suited or not than a PM to do it, than a product marketer to do it? And how do these two roles how should they cooperate, work together? Are they the same thing? Are they not? So Richard, what is then? Do you like the structure? Do you like this layout of the problem? And would you like to?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
And just because we're hanging out in person, I still won't soften that opinion. I still feel the exact same way, even though we're looking at each other. That even though I've had a career as head of product management and head of product marketing, now back in the product management sphere, I think that still, for the most part, from everything I've observed, even 4 or 5 years in product marketing and now many years in product management, that for the most part, a lot of people like to do a lot of parts of different jobs. And that's not a bad thing. I look at people who join DevRel teams and say, hey, I joined DevRel so I can impact the product. Kind of. Honestly, I don't know how many do. Sometimes they do. A lot of it seems very contextual. There's some organizations where you absolutely shouldn't even hire outbound product managers. What a waste of your time. Don't do that. Like, you might have that in your own product management, product ownership, PMM structure, whatever. There's other teams where DevRel is playing a significant part. So much of this is contextual. Just as I've mentioned, my observation is that for the most part, when product management is figuring out what they're going to work on and they're prioritizing, it's more insular. It's more of, what are my sources? What have I been working on? What do I have access to? They're not necessarily waiting for marketing to tell them what the next trend is.
Oh, okay. So have you felt that yourself as a product marketer when you've executed the role of product marketer? Have you been maybe frustrated by the fact that you were a PM before and you wanted to access or influence product development and you couldn't? And which, at that point, did you understand the same reasons that you're laying out or not?
Yeah, it was my reality. I didn't like it, but it was also, before I did marketing for 4 or 5 years, I mean, I guess honestly, I didn't have a high impression of it. It seemed like sometimes it was far removed from the work. It was people who didn't understand the product. It was a lot of the marketing ops stuff, which I still barely understand, even though I was kind of doing it, like running campaigns, qualified leads. Like, I don't personally care about any of that. That doesn't move me. But if I look at the product marketing piece, like, do you understand your product well? Are you helping amplify it? That sort of stuff I didn't really appreciate a ton until I was in product marketing and understood the work that goes into it, the machinery, the value of it, that frankly, nothing ever will sell without marketing, implicitly or explicitly. So any engineer, any product manager who looks down on marketing is more or less saying they're not interested in building anything that matters. Because it doesn't matter what you built in the privacy of your room, in your office, at your company. If no one knows about it, then you didn't do anything. Like, maybe that's a harsh reality, but to me, I appreciated marketing more. But I also saw that my influence into the actual product strategy where I worked was mixed because I was in marketing. And I don't think it was because of me. I still had all the channels. I talked to product management regularly. I used products and gave feedback, and I made some inroads. But I knew when push came to shove, I wasn't part of the product strategy meetings. I wasn't part of the product planning meetings. I was an input source. And I have to be okay with that. That's not my job. My job in marketing is to not change the product strategy. My job in marketing is to help people understand this product better so they can use it and be successful with it. And so sometimes I think it's not what we can do, it's what we should do. And I have to accept that what I should be doing is providing input, but still spending the majority of my time not trying to change the product, but do my job, which is help make sure people understand it.
Okay. So if I'm capturing well, what you're saying is that if we hopefully everyone's seeing this in a video, but if on my left side, I think the right side of your screen is product development, and in the right side, my right side, left side of your screen is market. A product marketer should focus way more on this direction. So from product development, amplifying into the market features, releases, launches, whatever, solutions, right? And from market, the other way around, influencing product development, way less. Not necessarily nothing, absolutely nothing, but the expectation should be low. And just, I'm not sure what you literally said, an influence point, a source, that would be it. Now, did I capture that correctly?
That's mostly right. And again,
okay.
Remember the market in stuff. Like, look, product managers can also do terrible marketing. So like, it's not their job to do marketing either, because they're probably not skilled at it. And so, and they're also not getting the sources of information that marketing can get. So when, one of the questions you kind of threw out there was, when we think about what is the market feedback, like, let's even take a step back. What market feedback are we even talking about? Exactly. When I look at where my team focuses and where we look at, even with our friends in marketing, it's of course things like competitor news and financials. First off, like, what's everybody up to? Hey, what happened in their earnings report? What are they talking about? What things are they seeing and saying is their future? That's an important source. What about using the competitor products? We do, right? Sometimes marketers even do, or at least go through and watch the videos and watch the industry conferences and say, hey, they're really doing a nice job on this sort of security story. What are we doing here? Like, are we actually doing something? I don't want to just talk about security. What's our product doing? That's an input source. Or industry conferences. What's happening at those non-vendor specific conferences, the QCons and others? What are we seeing kind of from the market? What are people kind of talking about at the emerging conferences that maybe haven't hit mainstream yet, but we should be part of that? Product managers aren't paying attention to all that. What about press stories? What's kind of the angle in the press about, again, funding rounds of startups and things like that? How about industry analyst research? I read way too much Gartner and Forrester stuff and RedMonk stuff, but it's awesome. And frankly, a lot of people are not. And so my job, I think a good PMM's job, is to be looking at that sort of stuff. Same with segment changes. What are the new entrants? Who's the hot startup in the new space and carving up something? And then frankly, an area where I think you and I have hung out a bit is even what's the perception of people who would never fill out a survey? Those who hang out on Twitter, those on Stack Overflow, those on Reddit. Have they just kind of voluntarily given feedback on products or a competitor's product going, boy, this thing's a pain in the neck. Why the heck do I keep using this? Isn't that really interesting input to say, hey, everybody hates this product. Could we be doing something that we would never have gotten in some survey to a bunch of CIOs or anything like that? We'd never hear that feedback, but I'd be getting it in social channels. So I think there's a half dozen different spots where marketers, outbound PMs, others are just absorbing a lot of noise to get some signals and then able to pull that into the product team. And that is unique value. That is not something product management's doing.
Okay. Now, that transformation of the signal into product input, that's what you're arguing that not only maybe, but outbound PMs or PMs in general are well suited for, right? That's where a product marketer should stop his or her work, and a product manager should actually continue that into feeding that into the product development strategy, roadmap, etc.
Yeah, I'm saying for the most part, product, people who are providing that feedback are sticking groceries into the cart. It's still up to the chef of how to combine them and what to make. Okay. So I could still, as a product management team, when I sit in strategy meetings or planning sessions, we're listening, we're taking in feedback. Somebody could still
Yeah.
say, I'm not doing anything with that though. I don't have the people. It doesn't seem strategic. Cool, good input. That's not changing what I'm working on. That's something where marketing can't be pulling their hair out going, you should be changing the product based on what I learned. It's not the way it works. Their job is to also look at other customer demand. They're getting bug reports that you're not seeing on the marketing side. They're getting other kind of strategic directives down from VPs of products going, hey, can you kind of quiet down on this thing? Because we need to invest in this thing. And so they've got everybody, right? Has lots of different sources. This is one. And so as a marketer, as an outbound PM, as a DevRel person, as an office of the CTO person, you are providing ingredients. It's up to the chef to use them.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then is there any specific collaboration areas that you see between, so wait, let's define it. Is there then a definitive difference between outbound PMs like you and product marketers like me? I mean, you're obviously much more knowledgeable and much more intelligent than I, but like the concepts of the outbound PM and the concept of a product marketer.
I mean, I don't want to give the consulting answer if it depends, but I think in some cases, depending on where it is, right? So when I look at what we're doing at Google, the difference between the product marketing team and an outbound PM team is, first off, I am part of like, hey, look, I help create our product roadmap. Like I'm the one who publishes the roadmap changes or writes one-pagers on a strategy update or use them, brought into the strategy sessions, the naming exercises. And then at the same time, almost half of my time, probably 3/4, is still plenty of the outbound facing work where I'll partner with marketing on, hey, we want to talk about X in Q1. What are some assets that my team might create that now you can also use to embellish and turn into a webinar, turn into a campaign, turn into some things you want to fish to a press source and turn something into. So our team can be a source of content for marketing, can be often a source of the messaging that says, hey, here's the actual original user journey we built for product. Let's not water that down as we take it to market. How can we make sure marketing kind of takes and carries that same core message and we don't lose some of that thread? So part of the outbound PM team is really just being a better conduit to kind of make sure that marketing and field and sales kind of get the original message. But in some orgs, it's unnecessary. Like a PMM, and I've worked in this, my last job, PMM was still very joined at the hip to PM for the most part, where I didn't need any layer in between.
Oh, nice.
It was just like, look, both sides know what's going on, both sides do good handoffs, and that's perfect, and that should work great.
Actually, am I getting this right that you were doing your job pretty successfully because you were, if I'm getting this right from Corey's interview, the one that I mentioned at the beginning, the one at Screaming in the Clouds, you were the first outbound PM, and now you are, there's 60 of you right now?
Yeah, I was the first external hire. I think there were a couple of people that threw their hat in the ring internally and were kind of doing stuff, but I was the first external hire, the first kind of team leader that was hired. And yeah, now we just counted yesterday. I think it's like 62 outbound PMs across different areas. It's across like 10, 12 teams now. And again, that's one of the other differences from a core PM is that outbound PMs also kind of associate to a portfolio. And so my area is things like containers, dev tools, and serverless. And so I look at all those. I'm not pinned to one product area. As of course, a PM or even a GPM usually has a scope that's tied to one product stack.
Yeah.
And so part of an OPM is also looking not only at those signals, but looking at kind of the thread through them. Like, hey, are you duplicating the thing this team's building? Or, hey, there's an awesome way you should be cross-selling between this and this because your product will never have a dedicated go-to-market. It's too small. You should be attaching to this thing or be part of the UX where if you use this, we should suggest that. So some of those connective tissue things outbound PM gets to do because we're PMing to some extent across a portfolio.
Oh, no, I see. I guess my last question would be, so, I mean, you've already touched upon the fact that you interfacing and interacting with product marketers all the time. You do so at Google Cloud. You did so before at Pivotal, VMware. Any specific examples of how you, for example, I don't know, would you like to provide any example of how you get together and understand market feedback or in any of the different in any of the different ways you mentioned at the beginning, sort of like, I don't know, analyst feedback or competitive analysis, or can you explain a bit how you do that with an example? And that would be my actual last question.
Yeah, I guess two things there. First, and something you and I talked about offline a little bit was even how PMMs continue to be more trusted counterparts of PMs. How do you do those sorts of things? And that often influences how I think about the feedback. Because to me, authenticity and sort of credibility are super important here.
Yes.
And I'm probably a little on an island on some of these thoughts, but I don't think you can be a great marketer if you don't fundamentally understand and sometimes even use the products you talk about.
Yes.
I'm going to be wrong. People will disagree with me on that. But when I can go to do a customer presentation, which I do 4 or 5 times a week, and I can go in and like, I'll demo something for you, or you can ask a question, I can answer it deeply. That means that when I go to the PM team and say, this week, I was building a demo, something didn't work right. I had already tried a number of times. And I went to the product team going, this feels weird. And like, yeah, we didn't think of that use case. Let me give you a patch. They did. It'll be in the next release of the product. Now that's an example of like,
nice,
I tried to use the thing we talk about. So my customer doesn't say, hey, I tried that. That's garbage. You know, why are you telling me about this thing that we can't actually do? No, I used it. I know the good and the bad. And so now when I talk to PM, they know that I'm coming from a place of, hey, I've tried first. I kind of know what I'm doing. And so for me, a good product marketer invests more than just even understanding the talking points and bullet points of their product.
Yes.
They kind of understand the user journey, who are the customers, the jobs to be done, some of the fundamentals of how it works. And it doesn't mean everyone has to be a programmer. Doesn't mean everyone has to be able to be doing those things, but you should at least be aware of it. Watch a video of someone doing it so you really understand it. So that's what for me fuels good feedback from analysts, because I can ask better questions. It fuels better ability to synthesize all the noise from competitors and social and whatever and say, I don't want to just dump 9 pages of random feedback on a PM. They're going to ignore it. I want to say, hey, we saw a bunch of stuff. I think these are the 4 things that matter. I'm seeing this repeatedly, and I'm seeing an opportunity for us strategically. That's useful. Or I talked to 7 customers. They're all giving me the same sort of type of feedback, or I'm seeing this. Here you go. So when you become a more trusted advisor, it's because you're bringing something unique to that person, right? You never want to be, I don't know, philosophically, I don't ever want to be in, invite myself to these forums. I want to be invited. And so the only way I'm invited is if someone says that person has something unique they bring to us. And as a PMM or an OPM, it's often around competitive feedback. It's around customer stories. It's around some other sort of like overarching strategy thing. I want to be invited. If I'm constantly knocking on your door going, hey, can I please sit in on your strategy meeting? You're going to keep forgetting about me. And that probably means I'm not adding value. If I have to ask, I'm not adding value.
Yes.
If you're asking me, that's different. And so we should all be aspiring to be asked to the party to some extent. You have to earn that. And sometimes you do have to shove your way in the door to get started. But over time, you want to be such an asset that people can't wait to have you there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. You're not on an island, or at least you're with me in that island, because it's related to the topic that I discussed with James Daman, Pipe, and Stephanie last year about their argument was like a product marketer or an outbound PM with enough skills will be able to take those into any market. And to a certain point, that's true, but I don't think so. I mean, you need to become a bit of an expert, not only on the product, like you just said, but on the market, but definitely on the product, to build that rapport with everyone so that you get invited. And that's actually something that I'm not only to product, but clients. Like clients need to trust you that you're able to deliver a demo, understand the product, and even collect their feedback about what you just said. And PMMs will struggle with that. That's absolutely right. But I'm with you on that. You need to be a complete product expert.
You have to build up to that, right? Like I've hired people on my team who have never been a product manager in their life, and I've hired them as outbound PMs because they had the sort of background I wanted. Some actually had never even been deeply in cloud. So, all right, you come on. Like I still go for the skill set. Are you a learner? Do you kind of synthesize information well? Are you a good communicator? Terrific. You're going to do great. Now I need you to immerse yourself because you have to be credible to internal audiences and external. So you don't get to just rotate in, generically understand the space and think you're going to do a good job. You won't. I don't see how a marketer can not at least invest more deeply, or an outbound PM or a PM just relying on their generic skill set, which is useful. You got to go deeper.
Yeah. Well, Richard, that was all from me. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Again, I will share with all of you the 2 interviews that I mentioned at the beginning, the one with Corey Queen and the one with Brandon Witchett, if you want to know more about Richard's career. And that's all. Thank you, Richard, and see you in the cloud somewhere.
Yeah, and as you said in the beginning, as much as it can be a weird time for marketers, it's never been a more important job, and I think never more of an opportunity to do something interesting with it. So it's a great time to be doing it. Let's just keep getting better at it.
And congrats for your success, not only your personal success as an outbound PM, like we mentioned, like there's plenty of outbound PMs in Google Cloud, but also Google Cloud is doing great, by the way. The numbers just released yesterday, I think, are incredible. So congrats on that. That's also partially your success.
Yeah, it's completely due to outbound PM. So you're doing something right.
Bye-bye all. Bye-bye.
Hello, and welcome back to the Product Marketing Alliance's Misunderstood event. I'm Eric Manser, VP of Product Marketing for Crayon. And coming up next is a presentation that I'm personally very excited about. It's a quick hit keynote about the relationship between the upper levels of your organization and various other key stakeholders, and how product marketing can bring them together to work more effectively. This idea hits close to home for me. I work for a company that's universally known as the industry leader in competitive intelligence software, and we pride ourselves on how frequently we hear that our tool set is being used as a unifying force across teams and within organizations. Our customers use Crayon to help build a culture of competitive intelligence, ensuring that each and every employee knows the best ways of using rival data to their own individual advantage. With her presentation entitled Internal Stakeholders and Senior Leadership, are we all rowing in the right direction across product, marketing, and sales? Please welcome author, mentor, and 3-time product marketing influencer, Div Maniakkam.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for
Recording in
joining
progress.
today. We're going to talk about internal stakeholders and senior leadership. As a product marketer, we love wearing multiple hats and roles. And I always empower my team to think of what's that one role that you actually love and that you would love to do any day, every day, and keep refining your craft. For me, it was messaging and positioning, as I loved storytelling and connecting the human element. Now, every company, whether it's a Fortune 500 or a startup, product marketing success depends on our internal stakeholders and senior leadership, how they value product marketing. So in this session, I'll be sharing my lessons learned over the past 5 years and how to bring together product marketing, sales, and leadership alignment together with shared OKRs and key results.
Can you hear me?
Let's dive
I've
in.
not done it with wireless headphones before, so.
A little bit about myself. I am a product marketing influencer.
I might just let them in the room,
and
so
have recently
they're not
embarked
waiting.
on a journey to live a life of a portfolio life. These are my life values: inspire, trust and credibility, influence, extreme
Gertrude
ownership,
Johnstone,
and
as I
impact,
live
results in
and breathe.
relationships.
Where have you been all my life?
I'm passionate about finding
Give me one
ways in
moment. Sorry about
solving
that
the
after that
root
amazing
cause
intro.
of stress and anxiety with examples of mindfulness and essentialism, and also diversity and belonging. I recently published 2 books, one on my journey with stress and anxiety called A Broken Teacup, and most recently, Fearless, Be the Authentic Leader You Will Follow. With examples of mindfulness and essentialism, and also diversity and belonging. What does it mean I recently published to look at internal stakeholder and senior leadership? One on my journey with stress and anxiety called A Broken Teacup. To start off, let's talk about something that's very fearless. Be the authentic leader. What does authentic leadership mean? For me, so mindfulness and essentialism, and also diversity and belonging. Knowing that we're all human and that we need to respect and care for each other. Now, that's a different kind of leadership, but I think I've been truly inspired by our fearless leader, Steve, who was always there no matter what for his team and always empowered us to be our best every day. Now, having this opportunity and also having the opportunity to lead a team, knowing that this is the kind of leadership style that I want to take forward, if I had questions and if I wasn't sure about what I need to do next, I would just ask myself, what would Steve do? And asking that question helped me get the clarity that I needed. As leaders, we have to make tough choices, and our teams may not always understand why we do what we do. And this is where we need to be transparent and share to the best of our ability, because our decisions impact their day-to-day work, and we need to be mindful and respectful of that every day. I'm privileged to share and serve my team, and I'll do anything to help them succeed in their endeavors.